This month, the Allied High Command arrives in the City of Cities. The Greek Prime Minister gives the greatest performance of his life, and in Trabzon, in the Black Sea Karadeniz region, Pontic Greeks and Pontic Muslims stake their opposing claims to the future which will lead to war. It's February 2019, in Salvation and Catastrophe, the Greek-Turkish War 1919-1923, the best damn amateur history YouTube channel talking about these events 100 years ago. Konstantinos Travlos. On 7th February 1919, Field Marshal Allenby arrives in Istanbul, Constantinople to demand the removal of the Ottoman 6th Army commander Ali Ihsan Pasha and the demobilization of said army. This army was seen as a threat to the expansion of British control in Mesopotamia, and especially the oil-rich city and region of Mosul. The next day, on 8th February 1919, in order to send a message to the British and Allenby, General Franchet d'Espèrey, Desperate Frankie as Indy Nidell calls him, French Supreme Commander of Orient, stages a triumphal entry into Constantinople, Istanbul, riding a white horse gifted by the Ottoman Greeks or Ottoman Armenians, not very clear who, up the Pera Beyoğlu Avenue, nowadays called the Istiklal or Independence Avenue, to wild cheering and having a soldier hold his stirrups from each side, which is a very medieval concept. Suffice to say, the Turkish population did not appreciate the medieval spectacle. On 12 February 1919, Grand Vizier Tevfik Pasha submitted to the British High Commissioner that most Turks, including the government, were opposed to war crime tribunals that only focused on Turkish crimes during the war, as they argued that the Turks had also fallen victims of crimes perpetrated by both the Triumvirate Committee on Union and Progress government, but also the Armenian Revolutionary Federation. So they wanted trials covering both cases. On 14th of February 1919, Eleftherios Venizelos, Greek Prime Minister, gives a speech before the full conference of peace in Paris for the deposition of the charter of the newly formed League of Nations, in whose design committee he had participated. In his speech, he stresses that idealism, which he claims is part of his political thought, is totally incompatible with what he calls materialism, but is eminently compatible with pragmatism, and that the charter of the League of Nations has a proper balance between these two elements. Between 15th and 20th February 1919, Eleftherios Venizelos gives interviews to the Morning Post and the Reuters agency. He once again declared the need for the League of Nations, but was made sure to warn that people shouldn't expect too much from it initially. He noted that the suggested mandate idea for governing the territories taken from the Central Power should not be implemented in those regions where the local population had strong national ties with population of adjacent states. This was essentially an attempt to block any discussions of a great power mandate over the areas in the Aegean and Asia Minor claimed by Greece. When it came to Istanbul, Constantinople, he argued that whatever solution the League of Nations decided to implement, the Sultan must be expelled from the city, because as long as he remains there, he will be a constant threat to the United Kingdom and France due to their large Muslim populations. He believes it is imperative to include the expulsion of the Sultanate in any treaty, so as to show the world that Turkey loses its capital due to choosing to ally with Germany and the other Central Powers in World War I. In the Reuters interview, he again declared his trust that the United Kingdom will give Cyprus to Greece, and reminded that the United Kingdom had done the same when it ceded the 7 islands, Eptanissa, of the Ionian Sea to Greece in the past, during the 1860s. He hoped that Italy would follow the example of the United Kingdom concerning the Dodecanese. He finally argued that the borders that he suggested in Thrace between Bulgaria and Greece were very close to the border suggested for Bulgaria by Russia in 1878 in the Ayia-Stefano Treaty, and thus could not be considered unfair to Bulgaria. On 23 February 1919, in Trabzon, Pontic Ottoman Greeks declared their intention to seek a Pontic Republic. The Samsun and Trabzon Muslim Associations for the Defense of National Rights also hold a joint congress in Trabzon, where they declare their opposition to incorporation into Armenia or the creation of a Pontic Republic. Between 24th and 27th of February 1919, Greek Prime Minister Eleftherios Venizelos presents the Greek claims orally before the subcommittee of the Paris Peace Conference that is concerned with the territorial claims of Greece. In general, he repeats his arguments that were presented in the written memorandum that was presented last month. Importantly, he recognizes the total unreliability of all demographic statistics in the region. And on the issue of northern Epirus, southern Albania, he again stresses the importance of national consciousness. And he argues that Albanian-speaking Orthodox Christians have a Greek national identity, since they were historically considered as enemies by the Albanian-speaking Muslims. He talks a lot about the relations of Cretan Muslims and Cretan Greeks as an analogy. Pretty much for him, language cannot determine nationality, only national consciousness. He is willing to accept a referendum in northern Epirus, but not in Thrace in Asia Minor, where he argues that the Greek population suffered ethnic cleansing and were deported, and thus the population mix changed from what it was before the war. When asked if there is any strategic value to northern Epirus for Greece, Venizelos argues that a small country like Greece cannot base its claims on concepts of strategic value. Thus, he will remain focused on arguing on the basis of just national reasons for that claim. He did point out that the Greek claim does not constitute a threat to the Adriatic and thus Italy. He then brought up the Florence Protocols about Northern Epirot autonomy, which had been done in 1914. And though he recognizes that these were never really notarized or certified, and thus never really put into power, he argues they have a moral value. He says that if Italy receives Avlona Vlores, then Greece should receive Northern Epirus. When asked about the rights of Muslim minorities in the regions that might be incorporated into the Greek state, Venizelos argues that the best guarantee for this is the very liberal Greek constitution with its strong articles for religious freedom. In further support of his argument that Greek rule is compatible with Muslim life, he produces letters written by Muslim members of the Bulgarian Sovarnia, that is the Bulgarian parliament, from Western Thrace, who declare their wish to be incorporated into the Greek state over any other option. He argues that they do this despite his role in the destruction of Turkish rule in Europe during the Balkan Wars, and that Muslims still prefer to be part of a liberal Greece that he was building over any other option. He further argued the Greek legal system, as put in effect in Greece, respected the rights of Muslims and treated them equally to Greeks. He noted that it is possible to further detach and give to Albania a part of North Epirus with a population of about 1,000 Greeks and 30,000 Albanians, leaving to Greece an area with 112,000 Greeks and 82,000 Albanians. He corroborates these 1913 Greek statistics with the Ottoman ones from the 1908 census. He argues that northern Epirus is also important for Greek strategic defense, as the Agi Saranda Koritsa-Korche road is one of the few ways to cross the Pindus Mountains. He then again stresses the conflicts between Muslim Albanian speakers and Christian Albanian speakers. He then moved on and covered Greek claims to Thrace. The areas claimed by Greece from Bulgaria will include 91,000 Greeks, 232,000 Turks, and 35,000 Bulgarians. The areas claimed by Greece from the Ottomans had a population of 237,000 Greeks, 193,000 Turks, and 35,000 total Bulgarians. If all of these were incorporated in Greece, there will be a total of 329,000 Greeks, 426,000 Turks, and 70,000 Bulgarians. An important note here is that Venizelos like to use the number of Greek students and Greek schools in an area as proxy for the cultural dominance of Greeks, and also as a proof of their superior culture that shouldn't be subordinated to inferior ones. When asked on the question of the protection of the Muslim religious and sacred sites in Greek territory, Venizelos claimed that Greece was more than able to provide the required support and protection. He recognizes that the Greek state did restore several churches in Thessaloniki Selanik when it took it over in 1912 that had been turned to mosques during the Ottoman rule, but the rest of the mosques of the city had been respected. Furthermore, Greece was committed to building 4 new mosques in Thessaloniki Selanik and 1 mosque in Athens. This mosque was never built, but has been an ongoing debate in Greece about whether to build it now or not. Now, the same day he did the oral presentation, he wrote 2 letters to the Greek Vice Premier Emmanuel Repoulis, who was actually the person who was running Greece while Venizelos was in Paris. In the first, he confided that he is confident Greece will be given the territory of Western Thrace, as well as parts of Eastern Thrace, including Edirne, Adrianople, and Kirkilise, the 40 churches, 40 εκκλησίες. He notes that the establishment of a large state of the straits around Constantinople, Istanbul, with a large Greek population is a good thing, as it will make the Greek element within that state much stronger. He also noted how he expects Greece to have to fight to assure the permanent cession of what is promised to it. Now, it is worth seeking military occupation as early as possible, even before the final arbitration. He also stressed that all of these discussions need to keep as secret as possible for Bulgaria in order to forestall any Bulgarian reaction. In Asia Minor, he confided that he was less confident about Greek claims, primarily due to strong United States of America opposition to them. But he hoped to overcome them by personal diplomacy and the support of the other great powers. On Cyprus, he noted that he was informed of the very strong opposition by military and colonial circles in London, but that he hoped to overcome this opposition to UK ceding Cyprus to Greece by working with Lloyd George. But he really is okay, he says, if Greece does not get Cyprus now, as he is confident that the United Kingdom will give it later on, as it did in the case of the Ionian Islands. In the second letter, wrote a bit later than the first letter, he stressed how after the oral presentation entitled Prime Minister, Orlando was very friendly and supportive to Greek demands. However, he did not expect that Greece would get all that he asked for it. That said, he was happy about the general change in Italian attitudes in the last 4 months. They seem to have given up pretensions on Smyrna Izmir, and Venizelos expected them to also give up on their claims to the Meandros River Valley. The Allies were willing to see the expansion of Greece to all of Thrace, which was a very big deal for him. Venizelos argued in the letter that there was no punishment harsh enough for King Constantine, as if Greece could get this much despite the ruin his policies brought during World War I. If those policies had never taken place, Greece could have gained everything Venizelos had asked for in 1915. He hoped that Greece would get Smyrna Izmir and Kydonia, Ayvali, with a hinterland, plus most of the Dodecanese islands, plus half of northern Epirus. He hoped that by making some sacrifices of the Greek claims in those two regions, he would win Italian support. He considered Italian friendship a sine qua non for Greece to maximize its independence from the three great Mediterranean naval powers to be able to balance between them. He considered this so important that he asked Repoulis to threaten Greek newspapers with deterrent censorship if they did not tone down their criticism of agreements with Italy and of Italian politics. He then tells Repoulis to make preparations for the government machine and administrative machine to be able to consummate any promises given by the Paris Peace Conference. The gendarmerie must be increased, and 2 new preparatory schools should be opened in northern Greece to produce more officers. There must be an increase in the number of civil servants with an economics or finance specialty, which should be done in coordination with the director of the National Bank of Greece, Mr. Negroponte. The immediate and broad increase of the civil service staff that is dealing with administrative issues is imperative. And when it comes to Smyrna Izmir, he immediately calls for sending Aristides Steriadis, the governor of Epirus, as high commissioner in Smyrna. Venizelos argues that Steriadis has shown an immense ability in managing the relations of the Greek state with Muslim minorities in Epirus. For that reason, he must be preferred over people who had stronger connections to the Liberal Party, like the leader of the parliament, the Speaker of the Parliament, Sofoulis, but had less experience in working with Turks. He called for taking measures to hire as many Turco-Cretans, that's Muslims of Crete, to create a new civil service force that will support Steriadis in Smyrna. Finally, he called on Repoulis to prepare a special police force for Smyrna, whose goal will be secret to the British who helped Greece rearrange its police force, that will be heavily staffed with Turco-Cretans again and will be responsible for maintaining the peace. The sources for this episode are mainly Andrew Mangos Ataturk and Ioannou Stefanu, τα κείμενα του Ελευθερίου Βενιζέλου. I wanted to also point out that a new English translation of Mustafa Kemal's Nutuk, The Great Speech, is out. This is an important source for the events of this era, though it is a source that you should be careful with, and I will strongly suggest you read Zurker's article on it before you read it. But nevertheless, it is worth reading. That is for this month. I am preparing a special episode on the rise of Turkish nationalism and of the Committee of Union and Progress, but it's going to take a bit of a while to get it out there. And beyond that, I suggest you take a look at the Great War series. They have started a new set of episodes covering the interwar era. I'm sure they'll cover the events that I'm covering, but I'm doing it with more detail. Thank you for your time. Please remember to like and subscribe, and follow us on Twitter, and see you all next month.